Diplomacy in the crosshairs. What Ramaphosa's confrontation with Trump reveals about truth, power, and global perception. South Africa's President Ramaphosa confronted Donald Trump's claims of white genocide in a dramatic White House meeting. What does this clash say about truth in diplomacy? In an age where political theater often overshadows policy, President Cyril Ramaphosa's recent meeting with Donald Trump at the White House served not just as a diplomatic encounter, but as a case study in the fragile state of global truth. What was intended as a high-level discussion on trade, investment, and strategic cooperation quickly turned into a confrontation shaped by misinformation, ideological bias, and divergent worldviews. Instead of laying the foundation for stronger US-South Africa ties, the meeting was hijacked by an emotionally charged, factually disputed narrative, the so-called white genocide in South Africa. The encounter reveals far more than a clash of national interests. It underscores the global risks of populist foreign policy, the weaponization of disinformation, and the growing challenge of maintaining diplomatic integrity in a divided world. The moment that changed everything. According to multiple sources, President Trump dramatically shifted the tone of the meeting by dimming the lights in the Oval Office and playing a video montage that included images of white South African farmers, gravestones, and clips of inflammatory speeches by fringe political figures such as Julius Malema. The message was clear. Trump was positioning South Africa as a country that sanctioned racial violence against white citizens, a claim widely discredited by South African officials, human rights organizations, and crime analysts. Ramaphosa, to his credit, did not flinch. He calmly but firmly dismissed the notion that the South African government endorses violence against any racial group. He explained that while crime in South Africa is real and pressing, it affects all communities, not just white farmers. Furthermore, land reform efforts are rooted in the country's constitutional obligation to correct historical injustices, not a campaign of racial retribution. Yet, despite his efforts to anchor the conversation in facts, nuance, and law, Ramaphosa's message was overshadowed by the sensationalism of Trump's presentation. And herein lies the tragedy. When political narratives are crafted for emotion, not truth, diplomacy suffers and the real work of statecraft stalls. Misinformation as a foreign policy tool. Trump's use of the white genocide narrative isn't new. It's been promoted by alt-right influences, amplified by white nationalist groups, and echoed by some conservative media outlets. But when the President of the United States legitimizes it in a diplomatic setting, it becomes something more dangerous, a state-endorsed distortion of reality. What's more troubling is how this narrative is now driving policy. Trump's administration recently granted refugee status to dozens of white South Africans based on claims of racial persecution, despite the absence of systematic evidence. This move has not only strained US-South Africa relations, but also undermined decades of work by both countries to promote racial reconciliation and balanced development. By pivoting US foreign policy on a baseless cultural grievance, Trump sets a precedent where emotional optics override empirical evidence, and perceived political loyalty outweighs objective diplomacy. The price of emotional politics for South Africa, the stakes are high. The nation is seeking greater access to US markets, new investment in infrastructure, and reaffirmed cooperation under trade frameworks like AGOA, African Growth and Opportunity Act. Ramaphosa's visit was supposed to solidify these gains. Instead, it was derailed by a viral myth dressed as a diplomatic concern. This isn't just South Africa's problem. When world leaders prioritize emotion over evidence, they risk polarizing global relations. They create divisions where partnerships once stood. They manufacture enemies where there are none. And in doing so, they betray the very principle that diplomacy exists to uphold peace through mutual understanding. The role of leaders in a divided world. President Ramaphosa's restraint amid provocation is a powerful reminder of what modern leadership should look like: principled, informed, and steady under fire. He came to Washington with an agenda to build bridges. He left facing a brick wall of ideological politics. And yet, he did not mirror the hostility he received. He remained committed to facts, dignity, and dialogue. This kind of leadership must be the future, not the exception. Conclusion: truth as the bedrock of diplomacy in a time where deepfakes can sway opinion and state leaders quote fringe blogs as evidence. The Ramaphosa-Trump meeting asks us to re-examine the role of truth in foreign policy. What kind of world are we building when power speaks louder than facts? When diplomacy is staged like a reality show? And when empathy is replaced by spectacle? The real question isn't whether South Africa has something to hide. It's whether the world has the courage to listen to the truth even when it's inconvenient, complex, or challenges our biases. In that moment in the White House, two leaders stood at a crossroads, one choosing fear, the other choosing facts. The world must now decide which path it will follow.